Hello, here at Amadora we are celebrating 15 years of being part of Making Cities Resilient campaign promoted by United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction. So, this is the first episode of our podcast about 15 years of working resilience at Amadora. Today, we are going to talk with some important international partners. We are going to start, and I'm going to present our guests to this new episode. So, we have Sharon Miller, a senior policy advisor for the Greater Manchester Resilience Unit at the Greater Manchester Combined Authority. Then we have Yi Gyong Ho, Associate Program Management Officer in the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction. And then we have Alessandro Attolico, Head of the Department of Territorial Planning, Innovation and Resilience and Coordinator of the Resilience Hub at Potenza, Italy. So thank you for joining me to this conversation. And I would like to start with you, Alessandro, because I wanted to know the importance of this Make Cities Resilient 2030 in the disaster risk reduction at the local level. What is the importance of this campaign for Potenza?
In my experience, MCR 2030 is much more than a global campaign. It's a practical tool that helps local government turn resilience from a concept into a governance issue, a governance subject. It connects people, policies, and practice. That is exactly what we need to make disaster risk reduction work at the very local level. In my experience with the province of Potenza, which is investing in prevention and preparedness since the early 2000s, and joined the MCR 2030 in 2013, in the first edition, these global initiatives gives a clear structure for integrating disaster risk reduction, territorial and urban development and climate policies, and to engage communities into the process. Resilience begins much earlier than an emergency occurs. It starts in how we plan our land, design our infrastructure, and involve citizens. The province of Potenza developed this territorial coordination master plan that embed risk and resilience principles directly into regional policies and spatial urban planning. It became one of Italy's real examples of using the resilience of communities concept as a planning tool. What I found powerful in MCR 2030 is that it promotes multi-level collaboration through many tools, including peer review. Local government that are the first responders in disasters can now work within a broader system ranging from local to international instead of being left alone. It also encourages data-driven decision. In Potenza, for example, GIS-based risk map and vulnerability assessment help mayors and planners see where people and infrastructure are more exposed, so informing and orienting decision-making, transform prevention in something concrete and actionable. And maybe most importantly, it helps develop a culture of prevention. Through education, awareness, and trainings, citizens start to see resilience not as a cost, but as an opportunity. So for me, in my experience, MCR 2030 really acts as a bridge connecting global frameworks like the Sendai framework, the SDGs, the Paris Agreement, also the New Urban Agenda, with the daily work of governments. For small and inner territories like ours, like the province of Potenza, it helps turn vulnerability into vision.
Sharon, would you like to share with us the importance of this campaign at Manchester?
Yeah, of course. Just to start off, thank you as well for inviting me to join today. And actually, it's a real privilege to be able to talk about the Making Cities Resilient 2030 initiative and the value of it. It is making a real difference in how cities prepare for disasters. And there's so much that I can say on this topic. So I think, firstly, having a global network of cities like MCR 2030, all working together to share ideas knowledge and challenges to help others to become more resilient. It's been a real game changer for us here in Greater Manchester, opening up new perspectives. And we've learned so much from other cities around the world, but it's also helped to shape our own approach to disaster risk reduction. And a few years back, the cities within the Making Cities Resilient network came up with essentially a resiliency checklist of 10 essential activities, things that every city needs to focus on to build and maintain resilience to reduce disaster risk. And these resilience essentials, along with other tools, were extremely helpful for us in guiding our thinking when we developed our Greater Manchester Resilience Strategy. In our strategy, we talk about being resilient, not just to emergencies, but to any kind of disruption. And we believe that resilience should be at the heart of every policy and decision that we make. So it's about partnerships and putting people first. But that means that resilience has to be inclusive. It has to be a system-wide approach to really be effective. So we in Greater Manchester have the honour of being a resilience hub under MCR 2030, and we're in great company with cities like Potenza and Amadora and others. And since we became a hub in 2021, we've seen just how powerful local leadership and global collaboration can be. We've hosted visits in Greater Manchester for cities from around the world, sharing our experiences, but also learning from them too. And those insights that we gain from other cities are equally as valuable as the ones that we share. MCR 2030 has also given us a seat at the table when it comes to global challenges. We've shared learning on various topics such as designing in urban resilience, integrated water management, community resilience. But we've also contributed a case study to the UNDRR Flames of Change report, showing how we in Greater Manchester are preparing for extreme heat. And of course, in Greater Manchester, we are probably more used to heavy rain than heat waves, but our temperatures are rising as well, and we need to know that we're ready. Events like UNDRR's Central Asia Regional Platform for Disaster Risk Reduction are extremely important forums, so they help cities to come together to focus on disaster risk challenges, and they help cities to develop actions towards a more resilient future. So I think that the final thing I really want to say is that I think it's been incredibly valuable. It's helped us in Greater Manchester to connect, to learn and to grow as a resilient city. And we're proud to be part of a global movement working together to build a safer, stronger future. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Yin Yong, I would like to know how United Nations has been seeing the implementation of this campaign at the cities.
Yeah, thank you very much, Helena, for having me, and thank you for this great opportunity to speak about the MCR 2030. So I think already Sharon and Alessandro explained very nicely about this MCR 2030 from the city's perspective. So maybe I can a little bit speak about it from the UNDRR's perspective as the secretariat agency of this MCR 2030. So the Making Cities Resilient 2030 initiative, or in short, MCR 2030, is really about turning global commitments into local actions. We often say that resilience is built locally because that's where people live and where services are delivered and where disasters and risks are most directly felt. So through this MCR 2030, we support cities in translating the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction into concrete local strategies, partnerships, and investments. And it provides cities with tools to assess their risks, develop action plans, and connect with other cities that are on the same journey towards the resilience. So MCR 2030 is not just a campaign, it's a community of practice, helping cities learn from each other and move from understanding their risks to actually implementing solutions. So Amadora is a great example of that, of course, and because Amadora has not only strengthened its own systems, but also shared its experience widely in the network and beyond as a resilience hub, which is giving a big inspiration for others to follow. So we've seen tremendous need and interest from the ground at the local level, and that's why platforms like MCR 2030s are so important, and they help cities move from commitment to concrete action in terms of DRR and the urban resilience agenda.
Thank you. So I would like to know, it's been a few weeks since International Day for Disaster Risk Reduction. The theme was finding resilience, not disasters. And I would like to know, what do you think what is missing for the cities to be better prepared to deal with the future disasters? Maybe we could start with Sharon.
Thanks very much, Helena. I think that's actually a really interesting question. And from my perspective, I really think it starts with understanding that resilience is a whole of society approach. So that means that we need to embed resilience into governance, into city policies, and into everyday decisions. Here in the UK, our national government have published a resilience action plan, which sets out a strategic roadmap for building resilience to all kinds of risks, so effectively an all hazards approach. But it's not just up to government. Resilience has to be a shared responsibility. That includes individuals, communities, businesses, and public services. So everybody has a role to play, and we all need to elevate our own readiness. In Greater Manchester, we're actually one of 5 areas piloting the Stronger Local Resilience Forum Trailblazer programme. And that's a 3-year national initiative to strengthen local resilience. We're aligning that in Greater Manchester with our overarching Greater Manchester strategy, and that sets out the vision for a thriving city region where everyone can live a good life. And this particular pilot scheme gives us a chance to test new ideas around leadership, governance and accountability for resilience. So we want to make sure that every part of our city region is prepared for future risks. But the challenges we have are making sure that everybody understands risks and prepares for emergencies. That's not always easy, especially with so many competing priorities. So we've been working, for example, with the Resilient Cities Network in 2 of our districts through the Resilience for Communities initiative to co-design solutions with local residents to reduce impacts of flood risk and extreme heat in those areas. And that's included turning a former school into a community-run resilience hub and installing green infrastructure to tackle flood risk. So essentially, it's using lived experience to shape actions. But resilience isn't just about infrastructure, it's about people. And we currently live in challenging times with polarization, misinformation, disinformation, and all of those things make it harder for communities to feel safe. And when you throw in the cost of living crisis, when you throw in financial pressures on public services, it's clear that the old safety nets that we have don't provide that same level of support for communities. And that's why our Greater Manchester Mayor is committed to doing things differently through a programme called Live Well. And that's a fresh approach to supporting people, but focused on prevention rather than reaction. So the idea is to help people stay well, to find good work, and to manage challenges in life before they hit a crisis point. And what's exciting about this initiative is that it brings together public services and voluntary sector, and it's about making support more joined up and more accessible so that communities actually have the resources, the information and the support that they need to drive change and to shape community-led health and well-being. So by changing how we actually work together, we can grow opportunities for everyone to live well, and then in turn to build a healthier, more resilient communities for the future.
Alessandro, do you share these ideas that Sharon just told us about, this work with the community and the investment on resilience?
Yes, I perfectly agree with Sharon. We are really talking about the changing mindsets. From reacting after an emergency, which is the common action that we used to do by investing after the emergency occurs, to investing before it happens. And that shift is still what is missing in many communities today. From my experience in the province of Potenza, I've seen that even if communities have the will to act, most of the time they do not have the means to do this. Financial systems are still set up to allocate big budgets after disasters instead of massively investing in prevention, planning, and maintenance. I selected three key elements of what is still missing, especially at our local level. The first element is the long-term financing mechanisms dedicated to prevention. Local authorities need predictable funding mechanisms to maintain infrastructure, reduce risks, and adapt to climate change, not just project-by-project grants. When the province of Potenza embedded disaster risk reduction into its territorial coordination master plan, the idea was to make resilience as a structural part of local development and investments, not just an emergency response. The second element is integration between financial and planning systems. Often urban planning, civil protection, energy policies are disconnected. Our experience is that by integrating risk data into every planning decision, you also integrate resilience into every euros you decide to invest or to spend. So every development choice becomes an opportunity to reduce risks. And the third element is the community engagement, the community involvement. People are not just the beneficiaries, they are part of the resilience economy. When citizens, schools, local business understand risks, they make smarter choices, demand for accountability, and even co-finance solutions. In our case, public-private partnerships are being promoted for mitigating many kinds of risks. For example, energy communities for contrasting climate change. This approach turns expenses into investments that pay back in terms of safety, sustainable development, and community confidence. From concluding, my opinion is that to fund resilience, we don't need just more money. We need first a smarter allocation and use of money. Money that works across sectors, supports prevention, and values the long-term social and economic return of safety and development.
So, Young, what have led on United Nations to focus on this question of funding resilience this year to celebrate this International Day?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for reminding us of the theme of the International Day for Disaster Risk Reduction. Yes, the funding resilience, not disasters. That is the theme of this year's International Day for DRR. So for many years, we've been saying that we need to shift the focus from responding to disasters to better preparing for them. And that means investing in prevention before tragedy strikes. So cities like Amadora and many others in Portugal are showing what this shift looks like, integrating civil protection, education, and risk awareness into daily governance. But globally, not every city or community has the same capacity as Amadora or Potenza and Greater Manchester. Often, preparedness or strengthening resilience doesn't attract enough funding because it often takes more longer time to build it, and its success is invisible. When prevention works, disasters don't happen, or the damage scale is very limited. So that's why public awareness is so important. When citizens understand the value of preparedness and demand it, governments, they are more likely to invest in resilience agenda, in safe schools, infrastructure, and early warning systems and planning. So in short, I want to just re-emphasize that we need to fund more resilience, not only disaster response, because every euro invested in prevention saves many more in recovery. So it's also an economical choice, I would say.
I would like to know what are the main challenges that United Nations, for example, faces daily to put these themes on the agenda, on the international agenda. How can we talk more about prevention and resilience?
One challenge is that while almost everyone agrees that resilience is very important, I think people often understand it differently. So for some people, it could mean infrastructure, and for others, it's about social systems or climate change adaptation. In reality, resilience is all of these things together. And maybe another one is visibility. Disasters attract attention from the media and the public because they are immediate and dramatic. But the work of building resilience happens more quietly every day, and normally people don't notice it and governance before the crisis hits. So I think our job in the UN is to make the visible work visible, to show that prevention can save more lives and resources and communities. So our task at the international level and at UNDRR is to keep resilience high on the agenda, even when there's no emergency, to show that prevention actually it can, the prevention is not a cost, but investment in people's safety and eventually in sustainable development. And the good news is that I think the more and more governments, mayors, and businesses, they are recognizing this recently. And cities like Amadora help make that case, because your example shows that resilience is achievable and beneficial for everyone.
Yeah. So at the local level, at Potenza, for example, what are the main challenges to talk about this daily?
In my perspective, one of the biggest challenges in putting resilience into the local agenda is that resilience is still seen as something technical, when in fact is a political, cultural, and social issue. In our experience, from my experience with the province of Potenza and through the MCR 2030 network, I'm seeing that local governments and communities are becoming aware of the effect of disasters, also because they regularly live them with the floods, earthquakes, heat waves, and so on. And they understand that prevention saves lives and money. But translating that local awareness into priorities for governments, both at local but also international level, is not an easy task. The first challenge that we are facing is the circularity of information. Local successes, like what we have done in integrating disaster risk reduction into land use planning, barely make it into the global narrative. International discussion often focus on national strategies and policies or large-scale financing, but the real transformation happens in small municipalities, in schools and communities. We need better channels to bring those local voices into international decision and vice versa. Making Cities Resilient 2030 is a strong tool for providing the opportunity to circulate information and to share best practice. And this is what we are using for trying to implement locally what others have already experimented in their context. The second challenge is speaking the same language. Resilience still means different things to different actors, mayors, NGOs, scientists, investors, civil society. Building a shared understanding takes time. In Potenza, we are learning that using evidence, you can make resilience demonstrable and measurable, and therefore more attractive for investment and cooperation. But that kind of evidence-based dialogue is still a challenge in many platforms. And then there is the challenge of defining priorities. Every day, local governments face urgent social and economic pressures, unemployment, immigration, cost of life, and so on. Resilience can be felt as an abstract issue compared to these pressures. We need to understand that building resilience is not an additional priority, but the foundation for all the others. Without resilient infrastructure, for example, institutions and communities, none of the development goals can be reachable. So when in my role, I advocate for resilience, I try to bring it back to communities and places for showing that resilience is not an abstract target, but a daily practice in local governance. It's about to create public value and trust between citizen and institution. This is the foundation of the local governance, for example. This challenge is big, but every time a local story like the province of Potenza, Manchester, this best practice that we have all around the world and can be shared and can be of inspiration for others, we take one more step toward making resilience not just part of one or the other agenda, but part of the world's everyday approach.
Sharon, do you agree with Alessandro speaking one language about resilience? It's the key. It's one of the keys to the cities to be more prepared, but also to talk about resilience daily.
Yeah, I think absolutely speaking in one language, and there's the points that have been made around resilience can mean different things to different people. Absolutely respect that view. People do think differently about what resilience is and what it means to each individual. When you think about the world that we live in today, we're connected more than ever. So it's actually fundamentally important that we get global resilience right, that we think about it in the universal context. We are facing things like global conflicts, climate change, and the risks that we face don't actually stop at borders. So international collaboration is absolutely essential. When we think about pandemics or supply chain disruption, those are transboundary risks. And again, they don't respect national lines. So resilience has to be a shared priority. So everybody needs to understand what resilience means. But I think the challenge is actually, how do we take these big global conversations and how do we turn them into real local action? And that's where networks such as MCR 2030 and also other networks, the Resilient Cities Network, Counterterrorism Preparedness Network, they all help cities to learn from each other, to share what works, and to also accelerate change in the field of resilience and building urban resilience. Resources at the minute, I think, are tight across everybody, and we've heard today about the challenges in terms of finances. And when local needs are urgent and those budgets are stretched, it can sometimes feel like international work is a luxury. But the insights that we take from global collaborations consistently prove the value that we have from these networks. And I just wanted to kind of give an example of in Greater Manchester, just because it's fairly recent, and it just shows how working together we can make cities stronger, we can be more resilient. Through the Global Risk and Resilience Fellowship, we teamed up with insurers and utilities, national government, and other key partners to assess flood risk to critical water infrastructure, but to also develop cost-effective strategies for climate adaptation. And this initiative showed the power of actually a shared understanding of risk, a shared responsibility, and data-driven planning, so that when cities unite across different sectors, they can work together to build a safer, more resilient future for everyone. I think the last thing I wanted to say really is that we're proud in Greater Manchester to be a global city, and working internationally is part of how we build resilience for the future.
Thank you, Sharon. Amadora has been part of this Making Cities Resilient for 15 years. I would like to know, Alessandro, if Amadora has been inspiring to the other communities in cities that make part of this program, of this campaign, as Potenza.
Yes, of course, I talk about our experience. Province of Potenza has been appointed as a MSCR 2030 in 2022, and with Amadora, with other partners, had a lot of collaboration and experience to share together. Yes, in my opinion, Amadora has absolutely been an inspiration for us working on community resilience. What makes Amadora stand out is not just its technical capacity, but its consistency and inclusiveness. Among other specific examples, Amadora is showing that resilience is built every day, in schools, in neighborhoods, in local institutions, not just in emergency room or council meetings. From my own experience with the province of Potenza, I can say that Amadora is one of the main reference points, especially for our municipalities. Both territories share a very practical approach. We are working to embed resilience in local planning, civil protection, education, and community awareness. And what Amadora is doing well is to create a living culture of prevention. Its role of community strategy, linking schools, health services, fire brigade, social departments, the municipality, the civil protection actors, is a model of our governance and daily life we can reinforce each other. And this approach became even more structured through a EU-funded project, a U-Score 2 project, a joint initiative of Amadora municipalities, UNDRR, and partners from other partners from MCR 2030 cities, including Manchester, and the municipality of Viggiano, that is one of the 100 municipalities of the province of Potenza. U-Score 2 contributed to local governments with a clear step-by-step method to evaluate and strengthen their disaster resilience performance, helping cities assess where they stand, identify gaps, and learn from others. What is also inspiring about Amadora is that it proves again that resilience depends on leadership, continuity, and participation, having managed to turn resilience into a shared civic value.
Sharon, how Manchester sees the role of Amadora in this campaign?
Thank you. I think just, starting off with actually working with all partner cities is always a privilege, but particularly in terms of Amadora, it's been especially inspirational for us, and certainly around intergenerational resilience. So one particular example and standout idea that we've taken from Amadora and also from Save the Children is the Take Care programme. And that's about older residents working with school children to talk about disaster risks and how they might prepare if something happens. So it's an effective way to pass on wisdom and to build resilience across generations. But also local faith communities have played a big role in that too, in helping to connect older people with younger learners. And so recognising that valuable role that older residents play in resilience led us to launch another project called Project Heatwave. And that was a partnership between local government, local communities, health partners and others. So older people are most affected by extreme risks, but many of them don't see themselves as being at risk. So they're less likely to take protective action. And we worked with that group to better understand their needs and to develop more effective solutions. So such as co-producing messages that prompt real action, using trusted community voices like the voluntary sector, and empowering local groups, support groups. So essentially reshaping how we protect those who are vulnerable to extreme heat through communities, communication and capacity building. But Amadora's influence in our intergenerational work didn't actually stop there. It also inspired us to create an ageing and resilience programme. And we have a dedicated role that works on that. And that's all about making sure older people's voices and experiences are front and centre of emergency planning, from building shared understanding to developing practical tools and place-based pilots. And that work is helping us to shape a framework for older people's resilience, one that's inclusive and rooted in lived experience. So I would say that Amadora has absolutely been an inspiration for us. And thanks to that collaboration, Greater Manchester is building stronger, more connected and resilient communities who are ready for whatever we face next.
Thank you, Sharon, for the kind words. Yi Young, how UN see Amadora and its work on this campaign for those 15 years?
Yeah, thank you, Elena. Yeah, as I've been saying, Amadora has been really one of the most inspiring examples in Europe and also beyond Europe. As a resilience hub within the MCR 2030 initiative, Amadora not only implements its own local strategies, but also it actively shares its experience with others. For instance, the city has also contributed to the MCR 2030's thematic reports called Flames of Change on urban risks like extreme heat. And also they participated in global and regional forums, and they led sessions and webinars as speakers, and even hosted a study visits, including the one from South Korea recently. So every time whenever we UNDRR reaches out to the Resilience Hub network, Amadora is among the first to engage, to collaborate, and to offer practical insights. So we are counting on Amadora's leadership in that sense, and that generosity of sharing is really exactly what the MCR 2030 community is about. Learning together, supporting each other, and ensuring that resilience is not just a concept, but a daily practice. So I think Amadora has truly become a strong reference for how a city can turn a vision of resilience into reality through leadership, partnership, and persistence over time. So taking this opportunity, I'd like to congratulate Amadora on their 15 years of commitment to resilience. And I hope this journey will continue for many, many more years. Thank you. Obrigada.
We also hope to continue this journey, I'm sure of. So, Alessandro, Sharon, and Young, thank you so much for joining me this episode to talk about resilience, making cities resilient, and about Amadora works. So, thank you so much, and I hope to see you next time.